claims he's the victim of the phony emoluments clause. That's a cute one. We'll start with new poll numbers, though, on the impeachment inquiry. Half of voters in 6 states that helped carry Trump to victory in 2016 say they support the House Democrats' impeachment inquiry into the president. According to the latest New York Times Siena College poll, put the support at 50% of voters in Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Arizona. 45% say they oppose.
Willie, obviously, these national polls, we hear time and again that they don't really matter that much. I guess you could say the same thing about national impeachment polls. This is an election that's going to go down to 5 or 6 states, and those states just named Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona now is in play for a lot of different reasons. Not good news for the White House, not good for re-election efforts that they're at 50%.
Yeah, these New York Times polls line up with national polls on impeachment, with the majority saying they support the impeachment inquiry. These are the states. It's no mystery. It's well known that Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania gave President Trump the election in 2016 with just under 78,000 votes deciding who the president would be. If he's underwater with those voters, as he is, by the way, not just on the question of impeachment, but in those states at large, generally, his numbers are upside down. If he loses those states, that could be the end of it for him, because that is right there, for all the talk about what's happening in Iowa, New Hampshire, and all over the place, those 3-4 states right there, again, likely will decide who the next president is or whether he gets another term.
And, Gene, you look inside of these numbers, obviously, in these swing states, Republicans stay loyal to the president. Doesn't matter that he rebuilds ISIS. Doesn't matter that he betrays Israel. Doesn't matter that he's asking China to interfere in elections. None of it matters to these Republicans. They're all in. They don't care how much he trashes the Constitution. They don't care how many racist statements he makes. They're with him. The number to look at here are the independents, now up to 40%. As those numbers rise, and I suspect they will rise as more comes out about how corrupt this president is, that's the president's biggest challenge. That's the re-election team's the committee to re-elect the president. That's the biggest concern, that independents are up to 39%.
Yeah, and independents seem to be fleeing the sinking ship in those battleground states and in other states as well. And why shouldn't they? I mean, as we get to understand what President Trump did with Ukraine, as we look at his day in and day out performance as president, and you almost want to put president in quotes because he's not acting the way a real president acts. I think you're going to see independents continue to leave the Trump train, and where that leaves President Trump is out of luck. I mean, there's no way he can win with those kinds of numbers, especially given the trend line. And I haven't, there's a core of Republicans who are going to stick with him no matter what. But when you hear, the occasional discouraging word, even from Republican senators now, specifically in the Syria context, but nonetheless, when you start to hear that, you have to wonder even whether the sort of Republican firewall is going to continue intact, or if he's going to have some problems there as well.
Joe Mika, I would just add on the question of independents in this poll. 51% of independents support the inquiry. So that's to say a majority of independents in those 6 battleground states believe they see something they don't like on the question of Ukraine. It's just that 39% of them support removing him from office. But there is that question out there, is this going to alienate this question of impeachment moderate voters in those big important states? Well, a majority of them believe there's something to look into here.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else to always remember, Mika, is that we always have to remember is that when a pollster calls up and says, do you support the president, do you not support the president, a lot of people in the tribes, they go to their corner and don't always say exactly what they think. So just like people used to be ashamed to admit they support Donald Trump. In fact, nobody would admit to us whenever we went around and gave talks, nobody would admit that they were voting for Donald Trump. And at one point, I just started saying, you're all lying because you're all voting for him. Stop lying. And then they'd laugh and go, yeah, we are. Well, now, as Donald Trump exits stage left, I suspect that we will see the same thing where people will be reluctant to admit publicly that they can't put up with him anymore. But I had the funniest conversation with a guy in Florida about a month ago, and he knew I was on TV but didn't watch the show that much because he always got up early golfing. And he goes, weren't you a Republican congressman? I go, yeah, I was. And I had no idea that you know, I'm a conservative, but I have problems with Donald Trump. He goes, what are we going to do with that guy? I can't stand the Democrats. I can't stand Hillary. I can't stand Elizabeth Warren. I can't vote for any of those people. But, man, he's out of control. We need Mike Pence in the White House. And he went on and on and on. And I felt, Willie, you'll remember this, I felt like I was Eddie Murphy in that scene where everybody thought he was white. And he went behind the scenes to see what happened when he went around. And suddenly he found out that bankers gave white people money and didn't make them sign loans or anything like that. It was a peek behind the curtain. So it may say 92% there in supporting Donald Trump and not wanting the impeachment inquiry. But, Mika, it's actually the fear and loathing is rising. And that is something that Republican members of the Hill are picking up on.
Well, and you'd think the president would be focused on those people and those numbers, but he's actually focused